Hi, I'm Christopher McClinton, CMO for Finxact, welcoming you to another edition of the Extensible Podcast. And today I am also welcoming Anand Shah, who is partner and head of U.S. banking practice for KPMG, as well as Kevin Martelli, who is partner and head of cloud solution engineering for KPMG. So thank you both for being with us. KPMG and Finxact have been working closely together for a number of years and on a variety of client implementations. On our way to that, we spent a lot of time with your practice area at KPMG. We've had a number of your engineers and product specialists come through our Path to Agility training program and just generally getting very smart on the Finxact platform. So today, I am really happy to be talking to you both about a couple of topics, but thematically, this is about core modernization. And I am very interested to hear from you both because you are obviously talking to a lot of the financial institutions around the world who are making plans as it pertains to core modernization right now. So I hope to dig into some of those trends and drivers, hear what you're hearing, and just thank you for sharing your perspective and insights. Before getting started, if we could just hear from you both a little bit about your background and what you're doing at KPMG, that would be super. Anand, maybe you'll start us off.
Well, first and foremost, Chris, thanks for having me today. Excited to be participating in this session today. My name is Anand Shah, and as Chris mentioned, I'm a partner based out of Atlanta, and I drive our U.S. banking practice across all of our solution areas of focus, from payments, core modernization, digital banking to lending. Excited to join here today because this is a topic that's hot at the forefront of a variety of our clients thinking about bringing next generation digital solutions to their customers. And it's been a pleasure in collaboration with the Fiserv Finxact folks in a variety of areas on this particular topic. The time is perfect for banks to figure out how to modernize their ways of working as well as delivery of services to their clients. And so it's indeed a hot topic, and happy to be here today.
Thank you, Anand. Thanks for your introduction. I echo a lot of what you said about the excitement of this podcast, and really happy to be here today to present on how our clients are making this journey. Just a bit about myself. I'm a partner here at KPMG. I have about 20 plus years in what I'll say the technology and the modernization space. In my current role at KPMG, I focus as our overall cloud and software and AI and engineer leader. In that role, helping to drive and support clients as they migrate and modernize their applications into the cloud. For myself, more specifically, I focused in the vertical of the financial services, particularly core banking, where I'm helping our clients modernize their core banking applications into the cloud. Again, look forward to teaming up here.
Thank you both. So core modernization has been a trending topic for several years now, but really picking up in intensity to the point where it's not, something that's conversational. Institutions are making their plans, they're developing strategies, and they're at different stages in that process. I'd like to maybe begin our conversation by asking you what's happened. For a long time, everybody was maybe sitting on pause, waiting to see who might go first. It's very clear that it's happening now. So why now? And then if you might tack on to that, I guess you could say there are lots of drivers, but there must have been limitations of the aging infrastructure that finally just, had everybody saying enough is enough. What were they from your vantage point?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and a question that many of our clients are thinking through. I think the short answer is that changing client expectations around the products and services that they're offered by their banks is really the driving force behind this. And so 2 parts to the answer, right? All banks are trying to figure out how to innovate new products and services to bring to their customers, whether it's a loan product, whether it's a deposit product, et cetera. And there are significant limitations on legacy infrastructure and applications to be able to bring those products and services to market effectively and at pace, right? And so what's driving the need to think about modernizing the core and bringing in the digital expectations that customers have is really driving the need now. The war for the customer is real. It always was real, right? And in a world where we're moving more and more to digital capabilities, I think it's finding itself to continue to come up in a variety of our discussions. The other thing is that there are a variety of fintechs that are out there developing these new innovative products and services, bringing products like buy now, pay later, and a variety of other solutions to market. And so if the banks aren't offering these products, right, they're going to get eaten up by their competition. That's number one. And they continually need to find an avenue to innovate new solutions for their clients, let alone meet the regulatory expectations as they continue to evolve in a most efficient manner. But with respect to the legacy architecture and limitations on platforms, maybe I'll turn to my colleague Kevin to talk a little bit more about that particular aspect of it.
No, thanks. And I agree a lot with the factors that you alluded to there, where we see our clients with the needs to drive through these adoptions. And while I'll say it's safe to say that we saw financial institutions start to modernize their cores at different pace. Some were early adopters, some were sort of wait to see, and then we saw some that are still in the stages of experimentation. Nonetheless, I do think that there's a lot of realization that the inefficiencies and challenges that they have with their legacy cores, are going to have both business and technology impacts, which over time can really erode their market share and have a negative impact to the business. And I think if we think at a high level where these impacts of these legacy platforms are coming into place, it's really around their ability to innovate in the context of looking at and offering new services. We hear a lot of things around how AI is now maturing, generative AI, and these new techniques, and how can you innovate in a quick way on a legacy core, which could be a challenge. And not only from the innovation perspective, but new products and capabilities. There's a lot of new fintechs. You have your cloud service provider offering offerings. How can you meet market demand? So at a higher level, I think there's some of the items that we see that are being challenged with the legacy cores that customers and banks aren't able to readily get around.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I also hear that a lot. And I think the need to innovate, the need to be competitive, that notionally it makes sense. I think however, that we hear a lot, like the limitations of the aging infrastructure and so on over lots of time. I can imagine that there was quite a bit of technical debt that, gets accumulated, has to get drug along. You have proliferating middleware that is it's tedious just to maintain. But maybe you could help us with a bit more specificity. Like, what are those older systems doing or not doing well that are really creating these limitations? If you don't mind.
No, it's a great question. And I think the point's fair too, right? Because this can also help align where organizations to start, putting the money where they want to start evolving or implementing and enable on these core areas that have the most pain points. And I think going back to your question there, some of the areas I think we can look at a little bit more, specifically, and we touched a bit on this around adopting new capabilities. How important is it today to be able to kind of reach out to our customers in all their different channels? How important is it today for us to be able to have the same experiences when you go into a branch office, when you're using an ATM? You want to have real-time insights, data processing, the hyper-personalization for our customers. Trying to achieve some of these broader channels, new integrations of services is very hard for the legacy cores. They don't really scale horizontally, and they put the service in. By the time you get the service available, it's already on to the next service. So I think as we think about materializing some of the higher level challenges, I think that's one area where it's problematic. And another point I think that's rather important, and sometimes we get a little bit lost in the context, is data. All the data these systems are now producing with all these new interaction challenges, there's so much more insights we have with our customers. It's challenging for these systems by themselves to be able to take advantage of those data sets, to be able to gain the insights that they need, to give it to the right people, to give it right to the right applications to make those insights. So I think these data silos, I think the adding new capabilities, and then the ability for these legacy systems to scale really cause a lot of problems for them to be able to take advantage of what the customers want in the market. And then finally, it kind of goes without saying, is the maintenance and cost. Significant cost that you're dealing with. There's a lot of licensing costs, there's legacy costs to support, there's the skill sets, the time to add things in. So outside of those things, I think there's some of the core areas that are people have to help solve for.
I appreciate that. Those are really good points. I think, the point that you make about silos is it's interesting, because I think that is the case in a couple of different ways. You can even imagine how institutions have become organizationally structured around those silos. So, for instance, the legacy infrastructure, you had a core for deposits, you had a core for loans, you had maybe a core for commercial loans, you had a core for cards, core for mortgage. And those are the silos that you're creating institution, and the awareness between them wasn't so good. And so I think that you make a really good point there, because if you're going to shoot for that hyper contextualization for your customer that you're describing, I don't know how you pull that off when you have a bunch of uncommunicating silos. So I think you make really good points. I would say it's validating to hear you guys share some of this stuff, because Finxact has been at this for a while. you want to believe that you're not just in an echo chamber and just kind of believing what you're saying yourself because you're saying it quite, a lot. But this is what our customers that came to us that wanted to understand, what we were doing, what it was going to make possible. The stuff you're saying is what they were saying. And you guys at KPMG get to talk to a lot more institutions around the world than we do. So it's helpful to know that there's some consensus here, and these institutions are facing some of the same challenges that next-gen platforms are going to be able to help them address. Anand, if you think about like the last 5 years, there has been a lot of buildup. There have been some companies, obviously Finxact, but some others who have been heads down working on this, trying to bring to market the technologies that could address some of these issues. Thinking about maybe just the last 5 years, what has been the core industry? What has that looked like for you? And then if you could follow that up with what do you see it looking like over the next 3, 4, or 5? I think that would be tremendous for our listeners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of it kind of springboards from the comments that you were making. So in the last 5 years, particularly with the pandemic, even pre-pandemic, we saw the rise of digital banking, right? Customers want to be able to interact in digital ways with their bank in terms of getting access to their accounts and transacting. And despite what we think with the rise of digital banking, there's still going to be the importance on making sure that all channels, really, whether you're calling into a contact center, whether you're visiting a branch, or whether you're actually interacting digitally, is a consistent experience, right? And so, the importance of the architectures to be up to snuff with respect to providing a consistent experience has been extremely important over the last 5 years. The pandemic put an accent on the need for more digital banking capabilities in terms of the customer experience and being able to perform those transactions at scale, right? So there's been an evolution there. As we move forward to the next 5 years, right, a lot of our clients are thinking about, and we're helping them think through, how do you really go from a product-centric focus? Because the last 5 years, there's been a lot of focus on innovating new products and getting them out to customers. But how do you go from a product-centric to a customer-centric approach, right? Where a customer may need products across, Chris, you mentioned it, silos, right? I may need the mortgage. I may need the card product. I may need the deposit product, right? And how do we create experiences that encompasses kind of that 360-degree view of the customer to be able to provide the hyper-personalization, me, delight me, provide the services that are most relevant to me. And the way that you do that is kind of what Kevin was talking about earlier, which is leveraging the data and connecting these systems together and being able to provide that experience around knowing me and serving me with even more hyper-personalization that was ever done in the past. And so that's kind of the trend for the next 5 years, is to leverage the data capabilities and bring more efficiency to the customer experience. While again, I said it earlier, the regulatory aspect of it can't be ignored. You have to do it in a way that not only delights the customer, but you're making sure that you're safe from a reg and compliance perspective.
Really, really good points. Really good, helpful look back, look forward. It makes me think about some of the topics that were trending at Forum. Less than a month ago, I know you had the KPMG practice had a number of its members there. We appreciated that. If you were there, you couldn't have missed one of the biggest themes was openness. And there was really a fulsome defense and just support for that coming from the highest executives at Fiserv. How do you see that benefiting financial institutions? And I'm referring to the openness of the ecosystem, if you will. So kind of like Finxact's approach of we're going to be the best system of record on the planet. We're not trying to be everything else, but we're going to be highly accessible to those other applications that the institution needs to leverage to offer what it wants to offer. So how do the banks benefit from that? And do you see this becoming the prevailing model?
Yeah, so Chris, I'll start there, and then I'll ask Kevin to chime in from some of the technical aspects as well. But I think you said it, a core platform is going to become the system of record, right, with respect to being able to book and board and service and statement and do calculations for customer products. But at the end of the day, I'll go back to what I said earlier, right? It's all about the customer experience that we're keen on driving. And so openness, open everything with respect to being able to provide your products and services, not only to your bank customers directly, but also to be able to provide them in the marketplace, right, is definitely a trend. And having open architecture and API-driven capabilities allows banks flexibility to leverage platforms that can connect to the ecosystem of a core with the experiences that they're looking to provide, whether that's an online banking solution that drives a customer experience and hyper-personalization that we talked about, whether that's integration via APIs to data and analytics layers that will provide, the just-in-time insights at the moments that matter, whether that's better UI UX solutions that drive a customer down a journey, whatnot. And so, Chris, to your point, everyone is looking at openness as a way to be able to provide solutions, best of breed, that make most sense while allowing the core to do really what the core is geared towards doing, which is being that servicing record keeper of the particular products and services. Kevin, thoughts on the technology side?
Yeah, no, I think you touched on some good points. And, one of the things that I think about when I think about this concept of openness is, the sharing of services and the sharing of data. And how do you make that the most effective and efficient through your ecosystem, through your core platform? If we think about how Finxact is working as in their open ecosystem, they very much lend their ways into this API-driven approach to have a very ecosystem-friendly of openness that can come in and access a lot of the capabilities, which will offer new services to our customers, be able to take advantage of new capabilities that our cloud providers are offering us, give us accessibility to real-time data. So real-time data now is a bit more available to make better business decisions for our customers. And sometimes we might even think about this in the opposite when you hear open, but also the inherence of security. You get better security paradigms by having an open ecosystem. You're controlling more of it through the API layer, through the technology layer versus, people sharing data back and forth across like different mechanisms. So you get some inherent benefit to security. And finally, I think it really gives you a competitive advantage. You realize that you're not going to be the one-stop shop that's going to build everything the best for every customer, but you need to have an ability to be able to layer in. And Finxact also gives you, kind of that extensibility. So the openness and the extensibility to add services on where it may not be the core domain, but you may want to leverage something else. And by being able to take in the best of breed services, by having open architecture patterns and the ability to share data and share services, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're creating a better user experience for your customer. And you're doing that by leveraging the cloud, by leveraging a more robust native architecture, and then keeping it open and interoperable and also flexible in the way that you can add and enhance new components.
The one thing I wanted to add here, Chris, if I may,
Please.
I think what we're also seeing is an evolution of, done are the days of a bank in a box that does everything, right? Because it just doesn't necessarily solve the expectation needs of what customers are looking for with respect to experience, right? And so that need to, as banks implement solutions, right, we stay away from that customization. We move to configuration of solutions. There's been a big move towards fintechs developing solutions that are more customer friendly with the experiences that the banks are looking to drive for their customers. And so that openness in terms of architecture and integration has become paramount to achieve those customer experience expectations and to get somewhat that custom experience that you're looking for, that hyper-personalized experience that you're looking for with the security that Kevin mentioned, right, has become paramount theme as well.
Another evolution that I'd like to get your take on is see about the best way to try to frame this. It's almost as though the cloud providers have been doing their work as well. And I'm not talking about trying to develop banking applications, but they're making tools that are so powerful and that are so attractive to the financial institutions when they are paired up with a next-gen banking platform. I think you alluded to a moment ago, Kevin, the data now is available. It's available in real time, and the transaction processing is in real time. When you start to think about some of the tools that, whether it's any of the major cloud service providers, GCP, Azure, others there, that paired with these applications that are natively designed for the cloud is really compelling, to the point that I think it's fair to say that the banking sector, which might have been one of the last to fully appear to be warming towards the public cloud in a way that wasn't the case even, 5-10 years ago. So it would be great to hear your thoughts on that evolution and what you think is bringing that about.
Yeah, Chris, I think you hit it spot on. And I've been in this industry for quite a while, and I've seen a lot of evolutions of adoptions in the cloud. And what you mentioned about financial service institutions, I would call them almost different waves and at different levels of maturity. Many were a little bit hesitant at the beginning, but then you've seen some that went full in and did everything cloud and were sort of on the forefront of what was going on. But there was still a lot of resistance. There were still other banks that were a bit hesitant and doing POCs, trying to follow up on the path of other banks. But I would say for the most part now, every bank has realized the importance of what the cloud brings and the importance for what is needed to be able to help them continue to modernize their capabilities and bring them to the cloud. Now, they're in different levels of their journey, but I think that kind of prism has been passed where it's important. And you mentioned the part two. What we saw, ironically, was a lot of the hesitancy in the marketplace was around security. So there was a lot of concerns around security, and people had to wrap their heads around the shared responsibility model. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the banks? The regulators also weren't totally clear. It was the interpretation of the regulatory items that also were needed to be kind of applied. But I think all those things have been done. I think there's more confidence in the security paradigm. I think there's more confidence in how regulators look at it. And then finally, the banks knew all along for them to be able to get out of their legacy, they really needed to capitalize and take advantage of the cloud with all its services. And when you think through it, we've seen early adopters where they lift and shift and they put things on the cloud. The costs are more expensive. They're not getting the scaling. They're raising their hands in the air and say, why don't we get these types of benefits that we were promised on day one? And I think what they've come to the realization is around, and just where Finxact is in this, the heart of it is building cloud native applications. When you start to build those applications that are cloud native, you're really getting the scalability, the flexibility, you're getting improvement over time, you're getting access to advanced data, you're getting quicker time to market because you're building it in the context of how the cloud would expect it to really take advantage of those benefits to help accelerate on your journey of modernization and those cores. And, I'll add it on. There's a lot that you're doing there related to the application and how you're enabling that application to achieve its objectives. But it's also very important from the DevOps side of the house. So how are you building in your DevOps pipeline? How are you accelerating not only the application build, but how are you making sure that there's quality, getting it into market, testing, et cetera? So the DevOps process has also changed the way that we are interacting with our applications.
Maybe you would double click a little bit into that, because when you're talking about applications, next-gen platforms that were natively designed for the cloud, not lifted and shifted into the cloud. And specifically, I'm going in the direction of the DevOps that you mentioned. So It really had just almost like a revolutionary effect on the entire CI/CD process.
Yeah.
CI/CD has been, I'm joking a bit, but a bit of a misnomer for years. Continuous integration, continuous delivery. It wasn't continuous. Prior to these next-gen platforms, at least in this space, it wasn't. It was we're gonna do a bunch of work. We're gonna have a version. We're gonna compile it. We're gonna go through all of our release management schedule, but then 3, 4, 6 months from now, we will have an update, and you'll either get the update or you'll get the patch. Fast forward into this era that we're talking about now, that's upon us, and CI/CD is daily. This is the world of Salesforce, where the releases are practically being streamed into, if not production, the lowers, and then they're going through, that process. Talk about that for a moment, if you don't mind. CI/CD doesn't look like what it used to look like, and that has implications for the institutions as well and their partners.
Yep, and their customers. And you're right. If you think about the days of releasing things into production, it could be a week, it could be a month long between all the different cycles of getting the change request put in place, getting the approvals, having management review, reviewing all the test scripts. Everything was in different pockets. And you could build fast, but you couldn't release features fast enough. And in today's market, we all know there's so many things changing. We need to quickly accelerate getting those features into our customers' hands as soon as possible. Be top of the market to get the benefit that we're looking for. So if you think about these new CI/CD features, and we kind of ended it, my last kind of comment was, banks initially weren't realizing this because they weren't building these applications in a cloud native way, and they were still very much built into the legacy deployment pipeline. But if we can really take advantage and we really build cloud native applications, as we discussed, some of the things that you're getting, a faster return, a faster release date, you're able to quickly go through the release date. Indirectly, you also do increase efficiencies. We talked a lot about the manual processes that are being put in place and legacy ways to deploy it. But in this way, you'll actually be able to release quicker into the environment through automation. And I think one thing that people might say, oh, that can't be the case because this is so quick and so fast and you're automating it. But you actually get increased quality, which is interesting, right? Because you think faster times would decrease quality versus longer when people look at it. But the longer times were very manual. Didn't really have a lot of ways that they were looking at things. When you're automating stuff, you're automating your testing, you're automating your releases, and you're doing things in a consistent way. Your regression testings are done, your integration testings, your unit testing, everything has a mechanism. You're doing all the tests. And then I think about one last thing here is we've seen so much hype going around with these generative models and large language models, et cetera, and they're showing tremendous progress to even augment and make quicker this automated process to help you write your test scripts, to help you do your deployments pipeline. So I think the takeaway is it's important to build the applications cloud native, and cloud native, whether you containerize or cloud native, you're using cloud services that you want to use. But how do you build that CI/CD pipeline to really drive the efficiencies in your overall program so you get the realization of quicker releases, the most important features, highly personable. It's important to get that right.
Yeah, it could be almost a conversation or an entirely different episode, but you make a very interesting point around the generative AI. It's obviously coming into the ecosystem. I think I'm already seeing applications where it's being applied to fraud. But if you're going to try to train one of those models, you would want it to be on the most accessible, the most accurate, single source of truth data, which once again, Finxact, other next-gen platforms that are processing in real time, that are completely open, that's the best source of information. So really interesting. And I do hope we circle back to that. It's really a topic that deserves more time. But Anand, maybe if I just sort of asked plainly, what are the product features that are going to be, or that are available now on these next-gen platforms that weren't before?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. And, we talked about it earlier, right? I mean, I think every bank is trying to continuously innovate new products and services. And so in the past year or two, we've seen a lot of capabilities delivered around buy now, pay later, but we're actually starting to see even a lot more granularity with respect to product features that legacy cores didn't traditionally support, right? For example, being able to tie interest rate to transactions, right? So a card product that can actually have variable interest rate depending on the transaction type and be able to roll it all up to be able to provide effective statements, driving the personalization around providing rates by transaction type as an example, or interest rates that are tiered with flexible repayment terms, or being able to leverage data in real time. The theme of today we've been talking about is data, right? Being able to leverage data to real time, be able to provide a type of offer within a particular product set or segment. And so we're starting to see a lot of those capabilities. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the legacy platforms didn't necessarily support some of that configuration capability that's required to be able to bring those things to life. And so we're seeing a variety of approaches around leveraging technologies such as Finxact, right, to be able to bring those things to life.
That's very helpful. I'm trying to think about putting myself in the position for a minute of one of your clients. And I'm thinking a couple of things, like what can KPMG do to help me with this process? Let's say I'm sufficiently, persuaded that this is something that needs to be evaluated. What can your team help me do? What are the biggest challenges that you can just say, this is something you should be prepared to face? And how do you help me mitigate risk along that journey? It'd be helpful to just know, what are you telling the clients, how you're going to hold their hand through this process and give them good guidance?
Yeah. So Chris, where we always start is really to understand what is the product aspirations and strategy for the customers or the clients at the end of the day, right? So banking clients are thinking through their product strategies. We're bringing them thoughts and innovations around what we're seeing in the industry in terms of products that are being offered by their peer banks, but then also by the fintechs. And so there's continuous evolution and innovation happening with these particular products. The best way to do it is to really sit down with the clients and understand, where are they looking to take products, right? What are they trying to build? Who are they trying to compete against? What are they trying to be? And then ultimately, what products and services are they looking to bring to market? At that point, it's very important to get into the transformation approach, because a lot of bringing these products and services to market is essentially providing things that you haven't provided in the past to existing customers, as well as attracting new customers. And so the transformation approach becomes an extremely important part of the conversation, because where I started is that you need new and modern platforms to bring some of these capabilities to life. Does that mean that you rip and replace your old core? Well, that has been one that has been avoided for a long time, because it's essentially like performing heart surgery, right? It's very risky. It's lift and shift is not where anybody really wants to go. And so there's been a variety of approaches around, once you establish what your strategy and your product methodology is to bring new innovation to the market, around the paths that you take. We typically see three approaches. One is the innovation approach, right? I want to quickly stand up a new product and service, let it be standalone, and at some point I'll integrate it. That's one approach. Get something out to the market, test it, see how customers react to it, see what penetration you get. The second approach is to think through how do you actually bring that product and service to the market, but be able to integrate it with an existing core. So we call that coexistence of core or dual core approach. And that's the one that we're often recommending to our clients, including a variety of Finxact customers these days. The example is, I have an account on a legacy core. I have a new product, such as one that I just described, on a new core that I'm building, right? A coexisting core, such as a Finxact. How do I make sure that I'm able to transfer funds between those two accounts? Or how am I able to make sure that I have an integrated ecosystem where I can see accounts that exist on two separate cores and be able to provide that visibility back to the customer, but the ability to interoperably transfer between the two. And then lastly, the data aspect of it, right? How do I get that 360-degree view of products and services that exist in multiple places seamlessly without the customer even knowing, is the approach. The third approach that I talked about, which is core replacement, not one that we necessarily are recommending or seeing a lot of, just for the complexity and the risky nature that I spoke about earlier. The last thing I'll say on this topic is when you look at transformation, you have to think holistically, right? And so we often at KPMG talk about connected, powered, and trusted. The connected is thinking through what are the operational implications across the front, middle, and back office that need to be considered, right, when you're thinking about innovating a new product. Powered focuses on what we're talking about today. What's the most efficient mechanism to deliver the technology to bring those products and services to life in an integrated ecosystem for the best experience? So connected is front, middle, and back office, operational, procedural outcomes. Powered is the technology. And then trusted is the last leg that you can't ignore, which is how are you going to do it in a risk and regulatory compliant way, right? Because the worst thing that can happen is you build some great technology and you figured out your procedures to bring it to market, but you miss something on the risk and reg compliance side of it. So connected, powered, trusted is something that we talk to our clients as an effective way to make sure you're holistic in your transformation approach.
Kevin, does anything occur to you in terms of the risk mitigation part of this that might be very specifically technology related, things that they should be thinking about as it pertains to the technology they're selecting? Or
there's a few things. And I think the first part is kind of fundamentally making sure that you have the right team in place to be able to help deliver across this initiative. There's a lot of new capabilities and skills, and there's legacy knowledge that needs to come with emerging knowledge and bringing the right teams together to deliver. And one of the other parts, and we'll drill into some of the technology stuff, is your high-level design, your high-level kind of plan. What are you looking to do? And Anand mentioned a lot of different mechanisms, right? We kind of recommend this sort of incremental approach to be able to kind of achieve the objective. There may be some very small institutions that may just want to go to the big bang and do everything. So I think outlining your approach, your broader vision of what you want to do, the strong team, and then tying it into a pretty strong agile mechanism to be able to kind of afford you the opportunity to get those incremental wins while at the same time starting to move things out of your legacy core. It's important. I think we mentioned this multiple times from a build perspective is incrementally build, have smaller pieces that you start with. Failures, a little bit less. If you break something, it's small. Break that down into your microservices, better control around your microservices. Building this in a cloud native way. If you just lift this and bring it to the cloud and drop it in, you'll see higher costs, you'll see less efficiencies, and you won't see all those benefits we had. So really making sure you embed this into your cloud. And we talked a bit about DevOps, the CI/CD pipeline. How are you doing that? How are you going to automate around your broader vision? And the two that I think are really important and sometimes are maybe not thought of in the same light is testing. You have to make sure you have the right testing around the entire platform, from integration to unit, to UAT, to stress testing. And if you start thinking about this testing, everything in the past used to be very manual and you used to do a one-off and ad hoc. But this testing now gets embedded into your delivery lifecycle. And we talked a bit about generative AI and how that can even help to identify your test cases and automate your test cases. And missing test cases are traditionally what causes some of the biggest challenges moving forward. And then the last one I'll touch on is, we talked about this multiple times, data. Data is very important. So how do you migrate the pieces of data that's required as you're bringing online your new platforms or your new applications? So making sure your data is well structured, making sure you have the right data governance in place, data profiling, and you have a program around it. Now, if you're doing incremental, you may not be moving everything, but now it's even more important you have consistencies around your core data as you're opening up your ecosystem, as you're expanding your ecosystem. There needs to be some consistencies in the way that you work with your data.
Well, maybe just one more question. As I said, I think at the top of our discussion, KPMG has been close to Finxact since very nearly the beginning, over 4 years. And I think you, at that time and along the way, you've seen something about the Finxact platform that really appeals to you, to your practice area, that gives you confidence recommending it to your clients. What was that? What did you see? What do you continue to see? What might you like to see more of?
Chris, I think it's a great question. We've continued to move on this journey of talking to our clients about how they move past old and obsolete legacy platforms that are extremely expensive to maintain, and they don't give you the ability to innovate new products and services. And so what we've really appreciated about working closely with Finxact across a variety of clients and a variety of conversations with prospective clients is, Finxact is one of the few platforms out there that has this ability to bring new products and services to market with the openness from an architecture perspective to integrate back into legacy core. And I think that is an extremely important point when you think about approaches going forward, because folks don't want to go through this lift and shift mechanism, right? Those are multi-year journeys with a lot of risk, and you don't get incremental benefit along the way. And so what's attractive about platforms such as Finxact is, hey, I can take a methodical approach towards bringing new products and services to the market while meeting my customer experience expectations through integration, given the open architecture, to get the products and services out there with the customer expectations met, with leveraging the power of data to hyper-personalize, and then methodically move along the path to doing more and more. And so it's a great step way to get things done with a risk-based approach that's technologically sound as well. So, Kevin, I think you might have some thoughts from a closing perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the major points here, but what I've seen is in today's market and the way that technology evolves and how easy it is for companies to build new capabilities. I mean, we've seen so many startups get acquired for large amounts of money that have great capabilities to offer into the market. And I think where Finxact has gone right in the context of we're not going to be everything for everyone. We need the ability to use what we're good at, offer capabilities where we can to our customers, but there might be the best of breed solutions or other things that we may want to plug into to give our customers the advantages of those new capabilities, to hyper-personalize those experiences, to bring stuff back, to them in their new channels. And I think with this open architecture, this shared interoperable model, it gives Finxact an ability to deliver their own products, their own solutions, but where they can quickly augment and get them into your system within weeks versus years and years when they're already obsolete. So there's a play there to be able to have that core repository, but to really say our customers are first choice for us. And we're going to take the best thing in the marketplace. We're going to integrate it into our capability, and we'll have that offer in your hand in a fraction of the time that you would get there in different types of platforms. So I really say that that's a differentiator for Finxact and how they attack the problem to the market.
And I imagine, Kevin, as a technologist, Finxact's extensibility on top of its openness is quite intriguing, because this is essentially an acknowledgement that we didn't think of everything. Yep. You're going to be working with other partners, other solution providers. They're going to need to introduce schema into your data model, have it be normalized, objects that might not exist, key value pairs that might not exist, but it's going to let you do that to do what we haven't thought of yet.
Yep. It does it in a structured and governance way with the hooks built in to accelerate that type of consumption of those. So that's spot on, especially in fintech startups. There's cloud providers with industry cloud offering capabilities, and no one's going to be the best at everything. But Finxact knows where they're good. They focus on their core, and they open up, and they're not afraid to bring in other market players to focus on the customer and get the best experience the customers can have.
Well, I appreciate that from you both. It's very instructive. And I appreciate you just being on the podcast with us today. I'm sure that our viewers do. You have tremendous insights, and thank you for being generous enough to share them. I hope that we're talking again soon. And I hope you gentlemen have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. We're excited and happy about the ongoing collaboration. Thanks.